Hi, in this video we're going to talk about updating our class a little bit. I'm going to make sure that my mic is all the way up. Sorry for such terrible audio. I'm working on that, but in the meantime I'll try to talk as loud as I possibly can. Okay, so I have our animal class from the last video. I've updated the form a little bit and I'm going to show you that as we go. But before we start looking at that, I'd like to make a few changes to our two-string methods in both of our classes. So I'm going to go to my animal class first, and I'm going to locate the two-string method, and I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So I want to get rid of this comment that I had left over from getting rid of our species way back before we started our videos. And I want to make sure that everything is in a nice clean format. So I'm going to output something a little bit more rigid than what we have. I'm going to say animal. I think I'm just going to output a string of all of the different fields, and we'll fix that from our other application, and so that way we don't have any sort of weird things going on. So we're going to return our name and a comma, so we'll just go ahead and return a comma delimited file, and then our gender and a comma, and then our color and a comma. No, we don't need anything after that, do we? So that'll finish up our two-string on our animal. Now, the reason I want to do this is because I want to make sure that, turn our class value there, I want to make sure that whatever we're returning is just something that can be formatted by the calling class or method, so we don't want them to be stuck with our two-string format and have to regenerate a lot of different stuff. We're just going to go ahead and make it as clean as possible. Now I'm going to go to my dog class, and I'm going to change its two-string method a little bit also. And again, instead of having this output here, I'm going to return the value returned by my animal two strings method, and then I'm going to add a comma and our breed. Now again, we're just going to have a nice simple output like that for our different parameters. So I'm going to have to go back to my form class now, and I'm going to update that go button just a little bit. We're going to stop using it here pretty soon, but for now I still want to use it. I'm going to update that and make sure that we're doing our carriage return new lines in a good way. And let's see what we've got. I'm going to run this. Going to not be as pretty because we're going to output just some commas. Now you'll notice that the form is a little bit updated. So let's see, I've got Joseph, comma M, comma blue. The animal says woo. And then our dog, I've got Felix, comma N, comma brown, comma beagle, and the dog says woof. So that output looks correct. I wanted to fix that two-string to be a little bit more standardized. Now let's talk about the changes to the form. First of all, fix my screen here a little bit for you. I located the error provider control in our toolbox, and I added that to our form. We're going to implement that so that we can see how we can give our users some error response without using message boxes. And I moved our list, our text box list over, and our go button over kind of out of the way. You can tell I updated the title of our form, the text box, to be a little bit more friendly, and I added some fields associated with our animals so that we could accept user input. So I have a txt name, I have some radio buttons, RAD male, RAD female, and RAD trans, and I have a combo box with a drop-down list of colors, and in that list I've already added some items, some different colors for our different animals. We could enhance that color in many, many different ways. And then I've added a new button, and this is BTN Add Animal, and that's where I'm ready to begin. So I'm going to double click on that button to create an event procedure. Now, in this event procedure, I'm going to be creating our animal object. So I'm going to use some of our text box input instead of just typing in literal values. So I'm going to go ahead and use my animal again, and this is going to be a new animal, and he's going to be made up of, as I said, some different parameters. So first of all, for our name, we're going to use our txtname.text property from our form, and for our gender, we're going to have to cast something as a char, and we're going to use our, we're going to have to do some investigating on our radio buttons before we can do that. Can't just pass that straight in. So I'm going to back up here a sec and say if RAD female, I want to set, I'll go ahead and create a char data type first, thinking as I go here. So I'm going to create a char H gender, and if our radio button female is clicked, I'm going to set H gender equal to F. Better put my dot true property in there. What is that property name? Dot checked. It sure is. So if my checked property is true, I'm going to set my gender to female. Else, if my RAD male is checked, I'm going to set our gender equal to M. Else, if RAD trans is checked, I'm going to set our H gender equal to T. And finally, if I did not meet any of those requirements, I'm going to try to activate this error control on our radio button to give our user an error. So let's see, I'm going to set my error provider 1 dot tag. Let me go look at it. I'm going to go to my form, and in my error provider 1, I don't know if I want it blinking or not. I don't see anything. Now if I look at my group box, I do see that I have an error provider 1 field here. Error on error provider 1. The error description for a control. Okay, so I'm going to look back at my code, and if I can't figure it out, I'll just have to show you later. I'm going to use my group box. Well, we'll do the terrible thing. We're going to say a message box dot show error gender. Now we're going to come back and fix that later, but I'm going to have to look at that and make sure I know how to implement it so I don't waste your time. Okay, so now I have finally got my gender set up, so I don't need to cast that. I'm going to go ahead and use my hGender variable that I set up. Now the next thing I need is the color. Again, we put that into a combo box. And I named that, oops, I did not name that properly. Let's fix that. CMBBX color. Okay, that's better. That's why I wasn't finding that. So if I go back to my code, I'm going to say CMB box color dot, what do we want to use? Selected items, selected text. How about selected text? That'll give us a good variable. Now, of course, we need to do some error checking on that too to make sure that our user has chose something, but in the meantime, that's where we are. Now, why is hGender? I'm going to have to go ahead and give it a default value. Okay, so now I'm giving my user a chance to type user data in the different text boxes. We're going to create an animal based on their selection, and we're going to go ahead and update our text box that we did not name properly, text box 1, and I'm going to add to it a carriage return and a new line, and my animal dot to string. Okay, so now let's run this. First, if I click go, I'll get my animals that we set up as defaults on our go button. Now I'm going to type in some information for an animal. This animal is going to be named Julia, and it's going to be a female, and she's going to be orange. I've got some stuff. I've got Julia, and she's a female, but I'm missing my color, so I obviously didn't pass that properly to my class. So let's go look at that code. I chose the selected text property. I'm just going to change it to text, and let's see if we get more luck with that. Again, we're going to be adding some code to edit that. Julia, female, and she's orange. There we go. So now we've got all of our data being extracted from our class as we create it. So we've been able to take our class, add an extension with our dog. We took our form and we added a little bit so that we could have some information be passed from our form to create a class instance. So we've been able to create an animal with our form. Of course, the next thing we'd want to do is modify our form so that we can create an instance of a dog. Before we do that, I'd like to show you a little bit of code that I've put in my animal class, a little bit of error checking. Here we go. I'm going to go to my animal class, and in the setter of my animal name, I've added some code to check for the value of the parameter that was passed. Remember, whenever we execute a getter or a setter in C#, we get the parameter value passed to us automatically, which was the value that our user tried to pass into this getter or setter. Now, in this particular instance, I'm saying if the value is blank, they didn't send us a name, we're going to throw an exception. Parameter cannot be null, and we're going to pass the name as our parameter. If they do give us a value, we're going to go ahead and update that name. Now I'm going to try to run this without passing a name and see if we can get something to bend. If you notice earlier when I wasn't getting the color, we didn't have any problem. That's because I didn't add this code into our color variable. So let's try this so that you can see what happens. I'm going to leave everything blank and just add this animal. Error on gender. I did add edit checking for that. I don't know. Seems to have something there. I'm going to have to check into that. But it's adding it not the way I want it to work. Let me get back to you on that. And thank you.